It's that time of the week where I take your build, figure out what you did wrong with the parts, but also what you did right, and then rebuild it for the same price or even lower and give you more performance. Now this is not my video idea, this is from the channel PC Builder. He's really good at this, so I recommend you sending your build to him as well, but he's much bigger than me, so he probably has a million requests, and that's why I'm making this type of videos to help the community. But anyway, send it to him so you have double chance of your build getting featured on a video. And also subscribe to his channel, you're going to learn a lot about technology. If you want your build to get featured on my next video, go to the comment section, you will have the instructions and you will have all of the builds that I'm going to mention boosted down below in the description in case you want to take a look. And maybe one of them fits your budget as well and it's going to help you out, especially if you want to buy a PC build. Without further ado, let's start. With the first subscriber we have SwiftTest. He says that he mostly wants to do gaming, but he also wants to use his PC for work and he wants to go for 440p even though his current monitor is 1080p, so he's thinking for the future. I like that. His favorite games are Minecraft, Red Dead Redemption 2, but if he gets a better PC, he wants to start playing more demanding games, which is understandable. And then he asks if a black PC or a white one is better for his setup, and I mean this really depends on what you like and your view on designs, but let me tell you that white PCs are more expensive, so I'm going to go all black on this one. And one thing I forgot to mention is that he says that he wants RGB, but he doesn't want to go over budget, which is $950 max. And he sent me this PC for $936, which is under your budget, but there are some mistakes that you made here that of course I'm going to fix. However, it's not a terrible PC, but it's not going to give you the performance that you want, especially not at 4040p. You went with the AMD Ryzen 5 5600X. I absolutely love this CPU, however it's $193 where you can get the 5600 for around $154, so you're saving a lot of money for a CPU that's basically the same. You're not going to notice a single difference when it comes to gaming performance. Then for the motherboard you pick the MSI B550A Pro. This is a good motherboard, however you're spending $140 and I think that we can get a motherboard that's cheaper, maybe a micro ATX build, and trust me, if you want those aesthetic looks for your setup, micro ATX build might be the better option as well. So you're saving money and for aesthetics it's going to be nicer depending on what you like, of course. For the memory kit you went with the Corsair 16GB of RAM 2x8 at 3200MHz CL16 memory. Nothing wrong with this memory kit, but it's $60 and you can get much cheaper memory with no RGB, but you can also get an RGB kit right now for cheaper than this. But again, nothing wrong with this memory kit. If you really like it, go for it, I wouldn't mind. Then for storage you pick the Western Digital Blue SN570 500GB of SSD. This is a great M.2 drive, however it's only 500GB and you said that you wanted to play games like Red Dead Redemption 2, and if you get a better PC you wanna download more intense games, and for that reason I would at least recommend going with 1TB, even more, but 1TB is standard and it's going to give you much more space for those type of games. Then the graphics card, and I think that this is the biggest mistake, you pick the RTX 3050 FGA version for $355. Let me tell you that this is completely overpriced. Yes, you get DLSS and yes, you get ray tracing, even though the ray tracing is not the best here, but if you really want to go for Nvidia, you should go with the 2060. You get those technologies for a cheaper price and it's actually better. Spoiler alert, I didn't go with Nvidia because you will get more performance. Then for the case you went with the NCXT H510 Flow. This is a really nice case, really aesthetic, and it has great airflow. However, you didn't put any fans to this case, so at the end if you're going to put fans it's going to be more expensive, so I would rather have a case that has fans included, and we might be able to get RGB fans as well, which you said you like RGB. So let's see what we can do with that. And then for the power supply you pick the FGA VQ 650W 80+ bronze certified power supply. I believe this is a C tier rated power supply, so it's not really that bad, especially for the type of components that we have here. And this is the boosted build. This one has more RGB, way better performance, and a lower price. Let me explain why. For the CPU I went with the 5600, like I said before, not the 5600X. You save a lot of money there, the performance is going to be the same for gaming. Then I went with the CPU cooler, the ID cooling SE214XT. This one is RGB, so it gives you more aesthetics and also a more quiet CPU with better temps. And then for the motherboard I picked the Gigabyte B550M Micro ATX motherboard. This one is a nice budget motherboard that allows you to have an additional M.2 drive, so if you want more storage down the line, feel free to upgrade it with another stick. I'm going to talk about the storage in a second, but before going to that, we're going to the memory kit, the Holo-Y Warhawk RGB 16GB of RAM. This one is around the same price from the memory that you picked, but it's RGB and you say that you want RGB if you can under your budget. So here it is, you have RGB under your budget and it's going to perform just the same. For the storage, I went with the Silicon Power A60 1TB of M.2 NVMe SSD. Like I said before, if you want to download games like Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a heavy game, and then you also want to play more intensive games down the line, 1TB is going to be the way to go. You don't want to go with 500 gigs of SSD unless you decide to upgrade it down the line. And then for the graphics card, and this is the huge upgrade of this video, it's going to be the MSI Radeon RX 6700 XT with 12 gigs of VRAM. This one is a massive upgrade from the 3050 and it's proven to be around 78% faster at 1440p, and I don't know if you heard me right, but 78%, it's a lot. So if you want to go with 1440p down the line, this is a much better GPU, and also for 1080p you will have a much better experience with higher FPS. Like I said before, if you want to go for Nvidia, go with the 2060, or if you want a better option, go with the 3060, which is going to be around $20 more expensive than the 3050 that you are going to buy, which I think it's totally overpriced. But the 3060 is actually not a bad option. However, for 1440p, the 6700 XT is still much better and also cheaper, so I think it's the better option even for a 3060. But if you really want to go for the NVIDIA technology, drivers, DLSS and ray tracing, that's totally fine with me, but your 1440p performance won't be as good. Then for the case, I picked the Thermaltake B150 ARGB Micro ATX tower case, and this is a much better option for 65 bucks. You save money, you get 3 RGB fans already installed. You also have a front mesh panel, so the airflow is going to be great, especially for these components. And then for the power supply, you can do two things. You can keep the one that you have, which is a C-tier power supply, and the total price for the gaming PC will be 870 bucks, which you save around 60 bucks and you get a much better performance for both 1080p and 1440p. But this PC is designed for you to put a 1440p monitor without having any problems, which is what you wanted, and it also has RGB, good airflow, more storage, and a lower price. Or just for a bit more money, for $884, which is still under your budget, you can go with the EVGA G5 650 watt 80 plus gold power supply. This one is a B-tier rated power supply, so it is going to be a better option, especially for a graphics card like the RX 6700 XT. So we came under your budget, you're spending less and getting more performance. I hope that you feel like this build is much better for you. With the next subscriber, we have Infernal Frost. This guy told me that he wants to play at 1440p. He also wants to do 3D modeling, coding, and video and photo editing. That's totally fine. And he says that he has 16 gigs of RAM that will be adding to this build. So once again, I'm seeing some mistakes with this gaming PC that I'm going to boost. But let's start with the CPU. You went with the Ryzen 7 5800X. This is a great CPU. However, I think that we can get a CPU that's slightly better, especially for content creation. Because for gaming, let's be honest here, even if you get the i5 12400, you won't notice a major difference. But for content creation, I think that for 20 extra bucks, we can get you a gaming CPU that's not only better for content creation, but it's also going to be more upgradable, and I will explain why later on this video. Then for the CPU, you went with the Corsair iQOO H100i. I think that this is a totally overpriced 240 only one liquid cooler. It's beautiful, nothing wrong with the looks, and it's going to perform great. However, especially for this Ryzen 7 5800X, you don't need such a high-end cooler. But I think $140, it's a bit excessive when it comes to a CPU cooler. Then same thing goes with the motherboard, the MSI Mag X570S Tomahawk Max Wi-Fi. I think this is a great motherboard, but you can get something with the same features for less price. Then for the memory kit, you went with the same one that my other subscriber went with. Now, I don't know if the other kit is the same as this one. It has to be the same, but since I have no idea about that, I'm going to do an upgrade on the RAM as well. Then for storage, you went with the Samsung 970 EVO Plus 1TB of M.2 NVMe SSD. This is a great drive for $100. Once again, I feel like we can go cheaper and same performance. Nothing wrong with this storage. It's actually going to be really fast. Then for the graphics card, you went with the MSI Radeon RX 6900 XT. And I love AMD GPUs. However, if you're planning to do content creation, Nvidia has a much better encoder. And for that reason, for your build, I recommend you going with Nvidia. And trust me, for gaming you won't notice a difference between this one and the one that I'm going to put on the boost build. Then for the case, I think you're overspending your money since you're going with the Corsair 4000 the airflow case, which is a great case and it's going to give you a really good airflow. However, you're spending 90 bucks on 3 extra fans and you still need one more for the bag if you want it RGB. If you don't want it, that's fine. Case already comes with an exhaust fan that's non-RGB, but if you want the complete looks, I think the back fan should be RGB too. However, you're spending for the case and fans around $200, which is a lot of money in my opinion. I don't think you should be spending this amount on one just in case. And then for the power supply, great choice, the Corsair RMX 2021 850 watt 80 plus gold power supply. I believe this is A tier rated. However, I think that we can get a cheaper power supply that's also A tier rated, so we save a couple bucks there. But if you want to go with this Corsair power supply, that's totally fine with me. And then I think you're overspending once again on your monitor, since there are some monitors that are going to perform exactly the same and are on a deal right now, but we will talk about that in a second. You ended up going with a 2091 bucks gaming PC. Let's see if I can boost this build. So this is the build that I boosted. For the CPU, I picked the i5 12600K. Like I said before, it's going to be better for both gaming and content creation. And the price is only $20 more expensive. You get that extra iGPU that is going to help you out with video editing. So this is more upgradable, better for your needs, and it's only $20 more expensive. Then for the CPU cooler, I saved you a ton of money by going with the Enermax 240 ARGB liquid CPU cooler. This is all that we are going to need. CPU temps are going to be just fine. You definitely don't need to spend 140 bucks on a CPU cooler. Then for the power supply, we save you money as well by going with the ASRock 3690 with Wi-Fi included ATX motherboard. It has all the features that you will going to need for gaming and content creation. And you also get Wi-Fi included, which is a plus. Then for the memory kit, I picked the Patriot Viper 4. This is 2x32 gigs, 64 gigs of RAM, of DDR4, 3600MHz DL18 memory. Now, if you want to save some money, you can go with 32 gigs of RAM, nothing wrong with that. But if you want to have the best PC for content creation, 64 gigs actually recommended. For gaming, 16 gigs is fine, of course. But for content creation and 3D modeling, 64 gigs of RAM is going to help you a lot. And trust me, we didn't go over budget, so don't worry about that. Then for the storage, I picked 2TB of NVMe SSD with this Western Digital Blue instead of 1TB. For gaming, 1TB is fine. But since you want to do a lot of things, video editing, photo editing, 3D modeling, these are things that are going to take a lot of storage, so I went with 2TB instead of 1. Then for the graphics card, I went with the RTX 3080 12GB version. This one is around $20 more expensive than the 6900 XT, and I believe it's around 3% slower at 1440p, so don't worry about gaming performance, it's going to perform the same and you won't notice a single difference. And on top of that, you get technologies like I mentioned before, such as DLSS and ray tracing. This is a great GPU even for 4K, so if you decide to upgrade the monitor to a 4K one, you can keep this GPU without any issues. With the case, I picked the Thermaltake B250 TG RGB, and I think these Thermaltake cases are the best in terms of price to performance by the time that I'm recording this video. For 93 bucks, which is around $100 cheaper than you were going to spend, you get 3 RGB fans on the front, a beautiful front mesh panel, so the airflow is going to be great. So I believe that this is definitely an upgrade in terms of price to performance. And then for the power supply, I picked the Enermax Revolution DF 850 watt 80 plus gold power supply, fully modular, and it's going to be around $20 cheaper than the one that you picked. And this is still an A tier rated power supply, so don't worry, this is high quality. And then for the monitor, I picked the Gigabyte G27Q. This is a 27-inch 1440p 144Hz monitor. I've heard nothing but good reviews about this monitor, and it's on a discount right now. You save 60 bucks, that's why it's here, and you save a ton of money with this PC overall. So we went from 2091 bucks to $2071, which is not a big saving. You only save 20 bucks, but you get better performance for what you wanted. You get a CPU that's upgradable and also better for content creation. You get a GPU that's better for content creation as well because of the NVIDIA encoder with more technologies than AMD and better drivers. Then you get 64 gigs of RAM, which is crucial for what you want to do, and you get 2TB of NVMe SSD. So overall you get more storage, more performance, more RAM for a slightly lower price. So I hope that you feel like it's boosted. With the next subscriber, we have Daniel Schroeder. I hope I pronounced that right. He plans to play at 4K or 1440p. He enjoys playing Elden Ring, League of Legends, Valorant, and Cyberpunk 2077. He doesn't care about RGB, but if there's some RGB, he won't complain, it's completely fine. He wants a performance-oriented gaming PC, and he says that it's important that the PC is quiet so he doesn't get distracted while watching movies, which is completely fine. Let me see what you have. Alright, so this is a build and I see some really big mistakes here. Don't worry about it, we'll go one by one and I will fix it so you get more performance for what you want at a less price. You went with the i5 12400, this is a great CPU, don't worry about it. If you're just going to go for gaming though, consider the 12400F where you save some money, but if you want to do some content creation on the side, 12400 is going to help you out. So a really good CPU choice, but that CPU cooler, it's $104 for the i5 12400, which is not necessary at all. This is a totally the overkill for your CPU, you pick the Noctua NH-D15 Chroma Black, a great CPU cooler for high-end CPUs. The i5-12400 really doesn't need the CPU cooler at all. Then for the motherboard, you went with the ASRock 3690 motherboard, once again $207 for the i5-12400. It doesn't make sense for you to go with a 3690 motherboard and the i5-12400. If you want to go with this motherboard, at least go with the 12600K, which is unlocked. Once again, an overpriced motherboard for your needs. Then for the memory kit, I guess you have one purchased and you will have to buy another one that's the same, the G-Skill 16 gigs of RAM, so you match the same memory for 50 extra bucks. That is fine actually. I think we'll get brand new 32 gigs of RAM, but if you want to save up some money, this is the way to go, I wouldn't mind. Then you have a lot of different drives for the storage, which you have two already purchased, and you're going to buy the Samsung 980 1TB of M.2 NVMe SSD. That is completely fine if you want to go for that one. It's really fast, so won't complain on this one. And of course, keep the two that you have already, so you have more storage. Keep in mind that 1TB of hard drive is not fast at all, so I only recommend you keeping heavy files that you don't really care about on that drive. Then for the graphics card, you went with the 3070 Ti. I think that we can actually go for a little better than this one, especially at 4K. The 3070 Ti can handle 4K without any issues, but I think that you want to go with at least a 3080, especially if you want to do 4K gaming. You will get more performance and more VRAM, which right now is not really important, but maybe down the line with newer games coming, 12 gigs of RAM is going to make a huge difference. Then for the case, you are going to use the same one that you had already. I believe this is a mistake. You don't have tons of airflow on the case that you sent me, and you're also going to buy 3 fans that are $22 each. That's a lot of money. That's around $66 total just for fans, where you can actually get a case with 3 fans installed already for not much more. And then you pick the Be Quiet power supply, 850 watt Dark Power 12 850 watt 80 plus titanium power supply. Once again, this is totally overpriced for this build, $210. This is a lot of money. I think that we can do something better here. The total price for this build is going to cost you $1,531. Let's see if I can go for a cheaper option. So this is how I boosted this build. I went with the i5-12400, just like the one that you have, but instead of that Noctua high-end cooler, I went with the ID Cooling SE224XT basic CPU cooler. This is going to keep your temps low, and don't worry, it's going to be really quiet, so you don't have to worry about this when you're watching your movies. Then for the motherboard, I went with the MSI Mag B660 Tomahawk with Wi-Fi included, DDR4 motherboard, $190. We save up around $20 from the one that you picked, and you also get Wi-Fi included. You don't need to go with a 3690 motherboard for the 12400. Then for the memory kit, I picked the Holo-Y 32 gigs of RAM 2x16 DDR4 memory. Now, if you want to save around $30, just go with the stick that you wanted, but if you want a brand new RAM that's going to perform great, I think this is the way to go. Then for storage, I left everything as it was. I don't want to overcomplicate this storage thing. You will get plenty of storage and use the Samsung 980 for your favorite programs, even if it's for content creation or gaming, and put the other programs that you don't care on the hard drive. Then you also get 250 gigs of a 2.5 SSD, which is not ideal for nowadays, but I don't know, you can put some games there as well. Maybe the ones that are not really important. Then for the graphics card, I went with the RTX 3080 12GB version. Like I said before, this is a much better investment for the long term, especially if you want to go for 4K gaming. Then for the case, once again a Thermaltake B250 that has 3 RGB fans included, and trust me, this is going to be around only $30 more expensive than the one that you were going with, considering that you were spending that amount of money on those fans, but here you get much better airflow than the one that you were going to get with your case, and it's also going to be much easier to build your PC on this case. Then for the power supply, I went once again with the Enermax DF 850 watt 80 plus gold power supply. You get the same wattage and you save around $90. It's also A-tier rated, so don't worry about the quality, it's great. And the total price is $1,511. So we save you $20, we got you a better performance, new RAM, much better airflow, you get Wi-Fi included, and most importantly, it's going to be quiet for you to watch your favorite movies without any interruption. So with the next and last subscriber, we have Finn. He's from Australia and his goals are gaming and digital art. So he's thinking of high RAM graphics, and he also wants a PC that is going to last a long time. His resolution goal is 1440p 1080p or higher. His favorite game is Modern Warfare, pretty full on graphics and content wise, and he also wants all black if possible and no RGB. His budget is around 3,000 Australian dollars, which is around 2,045 American dollars. Now you're already over budget at 3,200 Australian dollars, however you included your keyboard and a mouse. I don't know if your $3,000 budget is for the PC only, total setup, I have no idea, but we're going to keep that under 3,000 Australian dollars, so it's under budget anyway. So the build that you went with is actually a pretty solid build, however there are some things that we can downgrade a little bit and get a much better performance for the price that you pay. For the CPU, that's actually a really solid choice, the AMD Ryzen 9 5900X. For the CPU cooler, I think that you went with something that's a little bit more expensive than I wanted to be. We can save up some money there and get you a nice Air CPU cooler that is black as well, and it's going to get the job done. Then same goes with the motherboard. You spend a bunch of money there for an X570 plus Wi-Fi motherboard, 320 Australian dollars. I think that's a little bit overpriced. And then for the memory kit, you went with 16 gigs of RAM only, which you said you wanted a lot of RAM because you were going to do digital art. So I think that you will need at least 32 gigs of RAM if you want an improvement here. Then you pick 1 TB of Samsung 970 Evo Plus, which is a nice drive and it's really fast. Then for the graphics card, you pick the RTX 3080 12GB version, a great graphics card for what you want. However, there are some versions for around $1,300, so you can save 60 Australian dollars for free basically, because you won't notice a single difference between this one and another model, especially when it comes to gaming and content creation. And then for the case, you went with the Corsair 4000 airflow. I figured out a lot of people love this case, however you don't have any extra fans here, and for hardware like this with the 3080 and 5900X, you want to have some fans even if they are RGB. You can actually turn off the lights of the RGB, so don't worry about that, it's not a big issue. For the power supply, you went with the Corsair RM 2021. This is a great power supply, an 850 watt 80 plus gold PSU. This is all that you're going to need, great choice there. So what I did with this build is changing the CPU cooler to the Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro 4 at around 130 bucks. Then I also changed the motherboard. I feel like it was overpriced for what you wanted, and I got you 32 gigs of RAM instead of 16, which is going to be crucial for you for your digital art. And you also said that you wanted higher RAM, so you need at least 32 gigs of RAM. I don't know why you went with 16 gigs, but that is totally fine. This is my average here. And then most of the components remain the same except for the graphics card. I got you the Gigabyte RTX 3080 12 gigs version. Of course, is going to give you the same exact performance and you end up saving money. And for the case, I picked the Cooler Master TD500 Mesh ATX mid-tower case. This one has a front mesh panel, beautiful RGB that you can turn off with the controller actually, so do not worry about the RGB. And then I got you another case fan from Cooler Master for you to put on the back. But then the other components remain the same and the price is 3,004 Australian dollars. It's not a huge boost here, you get more RAM, which is going to help you out a lot for what you want, and you're also going to be for that $3,000 Australian dollar budget. Now if your budget for the gaming PC it's $3,004, that's a totally different story. With that price I would upgrade the storage, so you have even more storage and you don't have to upgrade the storage in the near future, especially if you want to download a bunch of files and games. But that's about it. I got you slightly better performance with 32 gigs of RAM and the price is going to be lower, just fits your budget, so you don't have to overspend on your components. But the build that you sent me is actually a pretty good build as well. However, you will need case fans, so keep in mind that you will need to spend some extra money on those fans if you want to keep the 4000 airflow, which is totally fine. That was my whole video. Like I said at the beginning, go to the comment section to see the instructions on how to get your PC build feature on the next video. And if you want a Prebuilt PC instead, I have my video about the best Prebuilt gaming PCs of the month of September 2022. You can watch that in the top right of the screen. And if you found this video helpful, please leave a like and subscribe, but most importantly hit that bell button so you get notified when I upload this type of content. And you support the channel to grow. It's actually growing a lot. Thank you guys so much. So please hit that bell button if you want to support the channel. I will see you on the next one.